56-3 hit like a shockwave in West Lafayette, 12-0 for the first time in Indiana history, and the Big Ten world felt the rumble as the Indiana offense rolled like a machine. Fast, physical, and relentless. The Boilers were caught in the aftershock, but the Hoosiers weren't celebrating the past. They were pointing at the horizon. Because now, dead ahead stands the Ohio State Buckeyes. Wednesday is signing day, and Indiana is stacking speed, smarts, and size for the future. The coaching carousel is spinning, targets are moving, but one thing is clear. This train is rolling forward, not backing down. Rivalry week sent the statement. Ohio State gets the test. The Hoosier storm isn't done. This is Hoosier Football Tailgate, and it starts now.
Raiola. And hit up the sideline. Indiana. Asbury walking them down. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the Hoosier Tailgate here on thehoosier.com on a snowy, cold Monday evening in the great white north of Northeast Indiana as the Indiana Hoosiers are celebrating a historic season ending on Saturday in the final Big Ten Conference game over the Purdue Boilermakers 56-3. Indiana, first time in school history that Indiana has secured a 12-0 record, and that is something that truly is unbelievable what this team has achieved by doing that. I don't know if there is anyone out there that would have said that they were going to go undefeated this year against the likes of Penn State and some of the other teams they had on the schedule this year, playing at Iowa, playing at Oregon, that 3-game gauntlet we talked about, taking on number 9 Illinois at home early in the season and putting 60 on them. I just don't think anybody would have said Indiana was going to go undefeated. And credit to Coach Signetti, the coaching staff, and the kids for buying into the blueprint, working it one game at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, to ultimately achieve a great goal of going undefeated and punching your ticket to the Big Ten championship game this Saturday in Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. Good evening, everyone. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and welcome to Hoosier Tailgate here on thehoosier.com. Busy night here tonight. We're going to try to run through some things and talk about the game and what happened in that game versus the Purdue Boilermakers and Coach Odom's team, and what Indiana did right, what they did wrong, what are some things that they have to get corrected, because there is always something you're going to have to improve on. Now the margin of error is razor thin. It's razor thin. The mistakes that you may have gotten away with a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, if they have not been corrected, a team like Ohio State is going to exploit it. So these are some things that we'll talk about tonight about Indiana's most recent game with Purdue, but the fact that Indiana has now outscored Purdue in 2 straight years, 122-3, is just an unbelievable assessment of where Indiana is, and Purdue is momentarily with Coach Odom. I will say this about Purdue. I was on hand in West Lafayette to watch the game and get a true feeling for not just Indiana, but for Barry Odom's Purdue Boilermakers. They are not as far off as what people may think. They are a couple players here or there away that could propel them very highly into an overly competitive type of team. That I think Coach Odom will eventually get there. He may get there sooner than later because of the portal and what may develop there, but they're not as bad as what maybe some people think they are. It's just tuning what they've got and taking advantage of what may be there moving forward for this ball club. But Indiana, on the other hand, got a chance to see them. I thought they struggled early offensively. The defense, again, has played lights out for a better part of the year. If I had to complain about one thing defensively that I did not, nitpick, and being the devil's advocate, so to speak, they gave up way too many first downs on the third down conversion, and quite a few of them on third and long. And so that is something you're not going to be able to get away with against Ohio State. I mean, if you get Ohio State behind schedule, you have to get off the field on third down, because if you don't and you let them convert it, you're in trouble. And that's the thing that Indiana will have to avoid against this Ohio State team on Saturday, because of the explosiveness they bring. They have a highly accurate passer in the pocket. They found a semblance of a run game against Michigan, and Matt Patricia's defense is just like Brian Haynes' defense. Those two are about 1-2 in every statistical category that you can pick in the country, and that's the key component, is that you've got to be able to get off the field when you get a team off schedule on third downs. But want to appreciate everyone being here with us tonight. Like I said, it's been a crazy, I guess you could say, 48 hours to a degree, maybe 36, because the game was on Friday night. You had the rest of the games on Saturday. Of course, Sunday was the NFL. But when you came up today and you looked at all this and talked about Ohio State and Indiana, the first time in a long time, we're going to see 1 versus 2 in a conference championship, irregardless of conference, is going to happen on Saturday. Both coaches were available yesterday during the afternoon to talk about a short presser by both Coach Signetti and Coach Ryan Day. There were some great things that were said in terms of the questions that were asked of them. One question I thought that was very poignant in terms of what may or may not happen Saturday. The question was, irregardless of the outcome on Saturday, has Indiana and Ohio State done enough to justify being one of the 4 teams and getting a bye in the first round? And Ryan Day did not hesitate. He fanatically said absolutely, that Indiana and Ohio State both should have done enough, being undefeated, to secure a spot in the top 4 and a bye in the first round, irregardless of what happens Saturday evening, because he said, irregardless a team wins or lose, they should not gain or lose anything by that. So I guess what he was trying to get at is that it was a big time game. It's a conference championship. It's kind of like getting the prize of being able to go competing in it and not having it be penalized against you because whatever may or may not happen in that game. And I agree with his assessment. I would say the same thing about other teams, with the caveat, if you've got a 2-loss team in the conference championship, or you got, one of these things where it could ultimately penalize you, those are the teams that you look at and think, well, what about those type of teams like an Alabama, if they would happen to get beat by Georgia and that be their 3rd loss? Have they done enough to secure a top 12 ranking to continue on, even though with 3 losses? So it will be interesting to see what the committee does and what they view with that. We will find out more tomorrow, because tomorrow you're going to get a tip of the hand of where everything's at. Of course, the final doesn't come out until the Sunday night after the final conference games. and we'll see then what all the situations may be. Let's head back here real quick, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. Remember, we've got this big deal going on at thehoosier.com. You get 50% off an annual subscription to thehoosier.com. You get Rivals, all their recruiting stuff. You get On 3 and all their stuff, plus a subscription to The Athletic at 50% off an annual subscription. That is a phenomenal deal that will go up through a couple weeks here prior to the holidays. But, man, get on that deal, because you may never see something like that again there at on thehoosier.com. You get all that stuff for thehoosier.com. Those guys, breaking news, recruiting news. You've got everything that we're doing here at the tailgate, everything that I do in terms of recruiting analysis of players that are committed to the Indiana squad, all that, plus basketball, plus women's basketball, plus, I mean, you can just go right down the list. 50% off annual subscription. You get the rival stuff, which is top-notch in the recruiting game. You've got a lot of guys there that are industrial leaders in that aspect of things. On 3 and what they have come and just blown up on the scene with what they bring to the table. Really like their NIL stuff. I like a lot of stuff that they do there at On 3. And then, of course, The Athletic. You get a broad base look at everything, including the NFL with The Athletic. So 50% off annual subscriptions. Get there today. Also, in my bio, you have a link to the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatic storefront. Today, they're running 60% off on some items. Get to the tailgate, get to my X page. I keep calling it Twitter. I guess I should learn to buck up a little bit. Get to my X plays at Hoosier Tailgate. There's a link tree. Click up there in my bio. Go there. Click on Hoosier Tailgate storefront. You'll get all the items that are available that are IU merchandise, things to purchase with IU logos on it. And you will also see items that may have a 60% off on it, price tag today. I do not know how long that will last, but there's a lot of great items in there as well to get yourself, your friends, your loved ones, whoever, and get them decked out for Saturday in the Dome at Lucas Oil. And I'll tell you something, it's going to be crazy there Saturday in Indy. You've got Indiana and Louisville playing at 2:00. You've got Indiana, Ohio State kicking off somewhere around 8:00. That place is going to be painted red. There's not going to be anybody that's going to be hardly in any different color. So if you want to stand out, you may want to wear a white or a yellow, because there's going to be a lot of red and around that town on Saturday. But get over to the Hoosier Tailgate store on Fanatics and get what you can. Wild Times Last is, as well as other affiliates that we have. We appreciate your support. If you do that, those dollars go back into the show as always. But those two things are the things that I think are the most important at this point in time, especially with that 50% off the annual subscription of thehoosier.com. Let's go and see here. Michael, appreciate you coming back, buddy. We talked about IU 122-3. Flowing, Coach Odom looked to be in disbelief. Yeah, he was probably not just in disbelief, but very cold at the same time. Justin, appreciate you coming up. Yep, got a lot of snow up there. We sure do. Got about 7-8 inches and got another 2 to 4 coming in tonight. So I'm ready for it to be 70, of course, but I don't think I'm going to get there. Let's see here. I believe the loser of the Big Ten championship game should stay at, are you referencing the ranking, Michael, there? They should stay in the top ranking. That's kind of what we were alluding to. Oh, number 2. I see what you're saying. Gotcha. Well, I don't know if that will or will not happen. I do believe that's kind of what Dorian Day was asked that question, and felt that, everything in his mindset is it should not hurt you playing in the conference championship game. And that's why I've kind of said that tomorrow's rankings that are out, that come out from the College Football Playoff Committee, in some respects, are the final rankings, unless something just completely goes off the rails in some respects. I mean, you do have like Virginia playing a Duke team that I think Duke is 7-5, if I'm not mistaken. So there, if Duke would beat Virginia, what does that do with the ACC? And there's a ton of teams with 2 losses. I mean, the scenario with Notre Dame and Miami now is going to get a lot closer together in terms of their rankings because Miami beat Pitt at Pitt, just like Notre Dame did, and, beat them bad. And so now you get a situation where does head-and-head come into the equation between Notre Dame and Miami when it comes to a spot? And could that knock Notre Dame completely out of it, one way or the other? And there's a lot of those teams. How does the committee handle the Lane Kiffin situation at Ole Miss? We remember a few years ago when the quarterback at Florida State got injured, and there was a team that was in the top 5 the entire season. They lost their starter about, I want to say it was 8th or 9th game, fell off some, and the committee kept him out of the national championship team because they were going to have to play with their backup quarterback. Now, the one thing that's different, as a whole, you got to see Florida State play with their backup quarterback, and it was a different team with that gentleman at number 2, the number 2 guy in there instead of number 1, and how that impacted it. With Ole Miss, you don't know how this team would play without Lane Kiffin being the head coach. And I think it's a little bit different in the sense because Ole Miss promoted from within, they promoted their DC, and we'll see what happens. Now, the other twist is that the entire offensive staff went with Kiffin to LSU, and I don't think they're going to let them coach in the ball game, whoever they may play. So there's a cluster of a situation there with Ole Miss and Kiffin going to LSU and stuff. So a lot of things are going to happen tomorrow night when the rankings come out. And we're going to see what all transpires because Notre Dame doesn't play. Miami is not playing in their championship game. So you've got a lot of idle teams. So does this week mean you look at Notre Dame and Miami and you think, okay, if you got 2 teams with equal wins, losses, then you look at head-to-head and Notre Dame lost to Miami. Does that mean they go in front of them? And is that going to impact a game? For instance, like I said earlier, Georgia plays Alabama. And if Alabama loses in the SEC championship and has 3 losses, does that jeopardize Alabama's situation? Because they don't know where is Alabama going to be ranked when all this is said and done on Tuesday night. So there's a lot of different things that are going to happen between Tuesday and Sunday. There's going to be some good 2-loss teams that are going to get left out of the college football playoffs. There's just not enough spots. You're always going to have that, irregardless if you have 16 or 24, because the teams that are 17 or 18th or 25 and 26, all are going to be disappointed because they didn't get in, even though they may have identical records. So it is what it is on that. We'll have to wait and see. But I always believe that the final ranking really should be, for the better part, this Tuesday, and only adjustments that would happen to the group with undecided situations on Sunday when they release it, therefore not penalizing the teams. And this would benefit Alabama if they would lose to Georgia, if that was a settled deal that this is where they're at and it doesn't matter what happens against Georgia. So a lot of dynamics there going on, as I said. And again, we spent a lot of time talking about it and losing a lot of breath because we don't know. And we're going to sit here and summarize something that may or may not take part. Again, signing day tomorrow. Indiana is expecting to sign approximately 22 guys in this year's class. I do not think they will be adding any more to the class. I do think they're done in that respect. So they got what they got, which means right now they do not have a quarterback in this group. How that impacts them is a to be determined. There's a lot of things at that position that are up in the air. Remember Tyler Cherry, who set out this year because of the injury that he sustained, a year ago, right around this time, is scheduled to come back. Does he stay or does he go in the portal? I mean, so there's a lot of dynamics there that could be a part of this aspect of things as we move forward in here. Let's see here. Scott says, my son has seriously thought about fake being sick for this turnout day, dance Saturday, just so he wouldn't miss out on the championship game. Hey, I like his thought process. I do. I like his thought process. Little bit of sports before any other extracurricular activities. Yeah, lots of drama for football fans, Robert. You're exactly correct. And again, the SEC, ACC, all up for grabs this year. A lot of good teams, a lot of teams that, kind of canceled each other out. When you look at like Texas A&M, and I saw this via X, and I actually retweeted it from Brett McMurphy from On3, and he was on with Jim Coyle and I earlier in before the season started. And we were talking about some things. He was one of those that was kind of crucifying Indiana for their non-conference schedule. But he put out a tweet about Texas A&M, who was the third-ranked team in the country, and a lot of talk about how they should be in the number one spot over Ohio State. And his tweet was, they did not play a majority of the teams in the SEC when they played them, all had losing records in the conference. And they only beat a few teams that did have, national type of ranking type of deal, Notre Dame being one of them. But they did not have this grueling a schedule as some may want you to think because they're in the SEC, because they had, lost these teams that they end up playing had, losing records. South Carolina should not have lost to Texas A&M. I mean, that game was crazy. Up 30 some odd points and lose it because they came back, and hats off to Texas A&M for doing it. But South Carolina had a losing record. So, and that game was at home. And so they go on the road to Texas, and now Texas, with 3 losses, upsets the number 3 ranked team in the country. They're number 16. So where do they fit into the equation? Remember, the committee, for the longest time, when Texas was a 2-loss team, they were disregarding that first game against Ohio State because they were rewarding them for playing Ohio State. Now, when they got that 3rd loss, then all of a sudden they kind of tumbled, and now they've come back up into the picture, and now they beat the number 3 ranked team in the country in their rivalry game. They're the number 16th ranked team, but they have 3 losses. How do they treat them? But so you can see the mess and the quagmire that's existing out there. And I guarantee you, this committee, having been on them before when I was at the D3 level, I was on the National Collegiate Playoff Committee. You get down to those latter at-large things, and it is very hard to have a level-headed discussion when it comes to choosing between 2 teams that have identical records, and the separation between the 2 is razor thin. It's just going to happen, and those debates will be very opinionated, and we'll see how the SEC shakes out of it, because that Stanky and the SEC, that's led by the Arkansas AD, will have a lot to say about maybe who gets in those spots, but we'll see. But Indiana's recruits, I wanted to see if I can, let's go over here real quick, take that off there, take a look at Indiana's commitment list here closely. Right now in the ranking category, 28th overall in the country. So that's very good, as they were 53rd a year ago. They're ninth in the Big Ten, I believe. And the class ranking by the number of stars someone has gone up a couple points. And so Indiana's done quite well in that respect. You got, some of these guys, there are video breakdowns of these guys, as we want to be told about the different deals that are going on out there. But I've done video on a lot of these guys. So go over to the Hoosier.com, get that annual subscription, 50% off, and you can see all this. But Gabe Hill is a really good D lineman, as this has been the kind of the emphasis of this recruiting class. He's a big time out of Naperville guy. He's a good player. As you can see his ranking, I think he just got elevated to a 4-star. Henry Ollinger, he's a linebacker, played tailback as well over in Columbus, over at Grandview Heights, and he is a phenomenal athlete. He's 6'1", 210, can run, got great vertical and horizontal speed, great hips, and I'm excited to see how that kid comes in there. Hugan is a kid that, again, a 4-star linebacker out of Booker down in Sarasota, really good football school. McCaney, he's a kid out of IMG, but he's an Indiana kid. Another really good player, D lineman, and he's a 4-star. Johnson, the edge rusher out of Missouri. I really like this kid too, 6'4", 245. He's a little raw, but I like the way he plays the game. Then you got the Jadon Williams out of Massillon, Ohio. This is the linebacker that I do think Indiana stole one. I think this kid is better than what maybe some are evaluating. 247 has him at a 4-star, and I would say he's closer than to a 4-star than anything. This is the interesting kid out of Columbus North, Parker Elmore. He was a quarterback at a small school, got hurt, transferred, did not play, and he's not played for 2 years. So this is kind of one of those ones that he may come out of nowhere and really surprise everyone, because I've heard nothing but glowing remarks about this kid's athleticism. He's a really good basketball player, can jump out of the gym, and they said this kid is going to surprise a lot of people. Casimir Hicks, that's the DB out of Decatur Central, elevated to a 4-star. Trevor Gibbs out of Crown Point. I like this kid too. He's a tight end linebacker. I believe he's looking at playing linebacker at Indiana. Another great one as well. I don't know why this isn't moving over here. Because I'm not moving it. That's why, you dummy. I was moving the wrong one. I'm sorry, guys. There's Casimir Hicks and that. Trevor Gibbs, of course. LeVar Keys is another one. I like this kid as well. He's out of DeMath Catholic out in Maryland. Good wide receiver, got decent speed. Benjamin Nowak, just saw him play on Saturday at the state finals as I was down there calling games as Bishop Dwenger. Called the Bishop Dwenger-Roncalli game, which was a great game. And Drayan played before that. They won the state championship game. Benjamin Novak is a man, and he's the kid that was committed to Wisconsin and now is an Indiana Hoosier, 6'7", 300. P.J. McFarland, he's out of another kid out of Ohio, Lakota East, tight end. Samuel Simpson, one of the first guys to commit to Indiana out of River Falls, Wisconsin. O-lineman, 6'4", 275. Jacob Savage is the kid out of Kentucky. He's another one I love. This kid can play. He's got good length. He's got ability to run. He's 6'1", 200 and about 20 pounds. He's kind of an Aiden Fisher mold, maybe even a little bigger, but he's good. The Timms kid, from Armwood down in Florida, safety, this kid can hit. He can hit. I like him too. You got Owens again from Douglas, Georgia. Another safety, good player. Smythe, D lineman out of Franklin Community, Indiana boy. He's a good looking kid. Campbell is out of Georgia. He is a running back, 6 foot, almost 190, 195. And then you can get all this off the On3 website, as these young men will be in the class of 2026 for the Indiana Hoosiers, right now ranked 28th overall and 9th in the Big Ten. And you got some 4-stars in the equation, so you got to be happy with that, with those group of kids. So everything looking great there for Indiana when it comes to where they're at in the recruiting. Like I said, I do not expect them to add anybody via flip or late offer in that respect, and I do think they will take care of what they got now. Their focus is the Big Ten championship, and they'll move forward from there. Again, couple things, and I'm probably spending way too much time on some things, but okay. The coaching carousel is crazy. Here are the jobs that are these jobs are currently without a head coach. Cal, Coastal Carolina, South Florida, as Goulash went to Auburn today. Memphis, that gentleman, that head coach, went to Arkansas. UConn, that's Jim Mora. He went to Colorado State. Tulane, that's Summerall, who went to Florida. Stoops just got fired late last night at Kentucky. Michigan State just hired Pat Fitzgerald today. Kind of a, 12th hour firing there with Jonathan Smith, who'd only been there for 2 years. He came in the same time as Sig, and I would imagine he kind of had to be called on the carpet and say, why is Indiana doing what you can't do or whatever? And I don't know if that was fair or is fair, but they made the decision to move on, and they hired Pat Fitzgerald. Remember his deal with Northwestern, he got taken care of. North Texas, their guy is going to Oklahoma, I believe. Penn State has still not hired a guy. And right now, I heard today somewhere, BYU's head coach is now the front runner to be the main guy at Penn State. Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, supposedly now a target by Kentucky, because he was a target by Penn State. So I don't know what's evolved there. You got UAB that is open. You got UCLA that's open, but I've heard JMU's head coach, Bob Chesney, is the guy. And there is an agreement in kind, so to speak, that he will be the next head coach at UCLA, which would mean JMU would be open. So there is a ton of jobs, even at the P4 level, that are still available, not including the group of 5. And there's going to be still some movement going on because you don't know what's going to happen. I'll say it now, even though I have no indication one way or the other of this, but this is just rational thought in this equation. With James Madison being open, and you've got former coaches that were there and understand it, and they've done both quite well at Indiana, kind of continued what they had done at James Madison, you would assume that those two guys would be candidates potentially at JMU. Don't know that for a fact, just assuming it just for the sense of rational deduction theory because of their relationship back in the communities there. So Brian Haynes and Mike Shanahan. Now, whether or not that's an attractive one for them, who knows? That's their business. But I would say James Madison has them on the list in that respect. So we're going to talk a lot about this for the last few weeks. You talked about Kiffin earlier and his decision to move on from Ole Miss and everything that goes with that. It's just been a crazy, crazy couple days here with all that. And then we got still some of the rankings and scenarios that are going to happen ahead of us that we just don't know what's going to happen. And we talked about that earlier. So we've kind of taken care of all that, and everything with that would be per se. Let's take a look at what happened over in the Big Ten this past weekend on Friday and Saturday. Some winners and losers. Iowa, man, they handled Nebraska 40-15. Nebraska, who had up Rule's contract because there were talks about potentially him going to Penn State because there's a relationship there. between Coach Rule and the AD. They upped his contract, and he didn't win, I don't think, a ball game after that was announced. And today, he just fired his defensive coordinator, who just assumed that role this past season. And he is out, and there's rumored to believe that there's more. Dylan Raiola was kicked off the team, supposedly because he was answering text or phone messages and calls from other schools inquiring about his services, because there had been rumors that he was going into the portal. Don't forget, his uncle is the offensive line coach there. So I'm led to believe that there's more coming in terms of staff shakeup, and we'll see what all happens. But that is a complete mess at Nebraska with everything that's transpired since Matt Rule got that extension. Of course, we got the Indiana and Purdue game 56-3. Indiana, again, like I said, last 2 years, 122-3 overall score. Barry Odom, don't think that they're going to be down much longer. He's too good of a ball coach, and he'll get them right, and he'll get them back flying around, and they will be somebody that Indiana will have to compete against in a better way here in the next few years, is what I believe. But anyway, Ohio State gets the win finally. Ryan Day gets the proverbial monkey off the back by beating the rival Michigan 27-9 in Ann Arbor. And pretty classy way how he handled it afterwards, because I know he wanted to kind of say some things, but he just, bit his lip and just kind of moved forward from what he would probably like to have said after that ball game. But I've got a ton of respect for Ryan Day. I think he's a class act. I think he has done a great job at Ohio State, irregardless of how they may or may not have felt about his performance against Michigan. It's just a crazy place over there. And, last year after they lost to Michigan, he had to hire armed guards to take care of his family because of the craziness that was going on. And it wasn't good. And I heard Lane Kiffin on his way to the airport yesterday, there were people trying to drive him off the road. And so he had to turn around to get a police escort to the airport. I mean, holy cow. I mean, this is nuts. But Ryan Day gets the big win at Ann Arbor, 27-9, and thoroughly, ends Michigan's hopes of trying to break that top 12. Oregon, what a game they played out at Washington, 26-14. They actually moved up in a poll, in the AP poll. We're going to look at it here in a second. But a big win there. Minnesota gets a big win at Wisconsin, 17-7. Penn State rallies to beat Rutgers 40-36. So they kind of finish on a strong note. I do believe they are now bowl eligible with that win. Be interesting to see what happens there. Michigan State, again, they win against Maryland, 38-28, but it wasn't enough to keep his job. And then, of course, we see USC beats UCLA, and the other one there that I didn't have up there was Illinois Northwestern, which was in Champaign that was a blizzard. If you wanted to see football in a blizzard, that was the game. But they won their game as well and finish up the conference part of the season with that record there. But again, some great games in the Big Ten, some great games around the country to finish up rivalry week in the season. So everybody now will wait till the final college football poll is announced, and then we'll know where people are going when it comes to the bowl season aspect of things. And again, just as a reminder, if you want tickets or trying to get tickets to the Big Ten championship game, I got a link for StubHub and SeatGeek as well. You may be able to find something there. I know there's some ridiculous prices that are being out there on the internet. One thing I did find out today, if you are planning on going, you need to go reserve a parking spot, because there are now parking apps out there where you can get a spot reserved right now prior to the game. And I didn't know that. I just stumbled on it. So may want to do a search or two or go to the Big Ten page. They may have a link for parking, and you may be able to find a link there that will show you some places that you can reserve a parking space for Saturday. And again, if you're going to the basketball game as well, it's another way to do that on top of that. Lastly here, it's before we take a quick break, AP top 25 poll. There's the top 25. Oregon was the big jumper in this equation in a lot of respects as you look there because of Texas A&M losing. You can see where Alabama and Notre Dame are in relationship, and there's, Miami at number 12. But remember, you got the group of 5 that's got that placeholder in that spot. So a lot will be determined with BYU and the ACC and some of those conferences, and then who may be the group of 5 school, because JMU is in that equation. I think Tulane is in that equation. North Texas is in that equation. So we'll find out this weekend. But that's the AP top 25. Indiana is sustained as Ohio State. Hold on here. I didn't mean to do that. And then the next one is the top 25, but this is ranking them by the power index, the power index that you can find on ESPN in that respect. So when you look at the ESPN FPI, and we've done that quite a bit when you look at it, because it's got the resume, efficiency, and, some other, other matrices there. And Indiana's been in that top 2 or 3 for the better part of the season. This was the one that they put out today. As you can see, I mean, they got Notre Dame at 3 in that with the FPI matrix. And you can see where Miami is down here at 7. So it's really interesting. And there's Texas A&M, as we discussed about their conference record and playing, teams that have losing records. They dropped them all the way to 10 in that FPI setting. And then you can see here where SC and Ole Miss are in relationship to the rest of that. And again, if you were taking this as the setup for the college football playoffs, they would not be in it right now because that 12th place is a placeholder there. And I know there are some people are out there wondering what happens to Ole Miss when you look at this. They're firmly in at 6, and I just don't see them dropping them out of contention because Lane Kiffin left. I just don't see that in that respect from that standpoint. But in that aspect of things, and we'll look at it. I know, Jason, you had a question here. What's crazy is what will the committee do with the loss between Ohio State and Indiana? Yeah, it's a good question. Ryan Day kind of said it already that he doesn't think anything should happen to either one of them, and that they've done enough to earn one of the top 4 spots and the automatic bye week, because it should not hurt you. And I do believe there's some scenarios that applies, and there may be other scenarios where it doesn't apply, because it's not just a blanket across the top of all the conference championships, because there's some uncertainty, like the ACC, of what may or may not happen. So that is that. But the kind of a unique thing there with the FPI, and this is just the true AP poll that's put out every week, and that as well as the coaches poll and stuff. Hey, don't leave. We're going to come right back. We're going to step aside for a couple messages here. When we get back, we'll continue to review this game against Purdue and continue talking about what's ahead for Indiana. All right here on the Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com, and we'll be back right after this.
Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets. You ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors? Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find everything you need, from grills to jerseys and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike and Under Armour, all at unbeatable prices every day. with 8 Academy stores across Indiana, including our Bloomington location. Fun can't lose, and neither can you. Gear up today at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. 1. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. 2. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. 3. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season 1 for the history books. Make it legendary. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only.
Welcome back to Hoosier Tailgate here on the Hoosier.com. Thanks for you joining us here this evening. As I said, the cold northeast of snow of 7 or 8 inches on the ground with an additional 2 to 4 coming tonight. Like I said, this past weekend, I was down on Saturday. I was in Indianapolis for the state playoffs for the 2A, 4A, and 6A games, mostly just for the 4A is what we called. But came in from Lafayette after the Indiana-Purdue game that Saturday morning. It was a blizzard in Lafayette before I got out. And when I got down around Lebanon, Indiana, it stopped, completely stopped. And there was no snow in the greater Indianapolis area until about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon Saturday, well into the second game. And for the better part of the day, it was like they had a dome over the 465 down in Indy because there was no snow penetrating inside of 465, but outside of it, you know, those on the outskirts of 465, they were getting hammered pretty good. But ended up staying down in Indy, which I thought was the right thing to do because Bishop DeWanger, who won the state final game in the 4A against Roncalli in a great game that was decided by a fake field goal by Bishop DeWanger, and the kicker threw a touchdown pass. It was the craziest thing. Go look it up on YouTube or whatever. It's a great play, great call by the coaches. But DeWanger secured their state championship. But they drove back to Fort Wayne that night, and I heard it took 4.5 hours to get from basically the south side of Indianapolis all the way to the north side of Fort Wayne. And I would not have been able to do that. Not at all. I guess 30 miles an hour was the fastest they can move and from Saturday. So it was bad out. So hopefully we get the snow out of our system. Indy is not really got any snow. It's all either had melted the other day or what, but the roads were great. So hopefully it warms up a little bit so we get rid of the snow and stuff. So, but that's enough of me complaining about things of that magnitude. Let's head over to the stat sheet and get our commitment list off of here to talk about this for a little bit. From Friday night's game, Indiana and Purdue, as you can see there, Indiana held a distinctive advantage. Finally got the rushing game back on track, 355 yards on the night. And Roman Hemby, who has been so close to breaking the big play all year long, did it finally and was rewarded with an 83-yard touchdown run. Ended up having, I think, 120 some odd yards on the day. Keon Black had a great game as well. And Martin, that kid, the Martin kid, the third team running back, that kid is going to be really good. He scored another touchdown later as the third, in the mid of the third quarter. Signetti and crew put in the number 2s for the better part on both sides of the ball. Alberto did well. He first play, he raced 60 yards down the sideline on a read zone play. And then, of course, passing-wise, although it says 10 of 17 for 59%, and 193 yards, Fernando did not play very good in the passing game per se. And a lot of it had to do his first true experience in the cold weather element, because he had never played in a game like Friday night where it was 20 degrees out. And it affected him some, and he made some poor decisions as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. As you look at this, also as well, Indiana again, third downs, 50%, held Purdue to 37%. Red zone, both teams were at 100%, but you see the differential there. Indiana was 4 for 4 in there, and then points off of turnovers. Indiana, they had 2 on the night. And again, they score points off of turnovers, so well over 100 points this year off of turnovers for this Indiana team, as well as I stated earlier, 10 out of the 12 games this year, Indiana has put points on the board in the final 2 minutes of the first half. And I say final 2 minutes, figuring the 2-minute warning and less, but Indiana did that a lot of times with less than a minute on the clock. So it's been a pretty phenomenal thing to see Indiana score before halftime in the number of games that they did this year, on top of the number of points that they were able to garner off of turnovers in that respect. But overall, 548 yards. They held Purdue to 210 yards or 282 yards, giving up 238 through the air. It gets to the point where Purdue was having to throw. They couldn't move the ball in that respect, and that was, a big thing for them on Saturday. But Indiana completely dominated that. When you go and look at the objectives of this game, and this is something that, I kind of laid out as well last week. Offensively, they hit about 4 out of 6, 5 out of the 7, I'm sorry. Missing on the explosive plays, which they got, but not 260 yards passing. And then the red zone, they did well in. The run threat, they did terrific in, doubling that projection. And they did well on the early first down scenario that I talked about last week. I was particularly not only impressed, but in some respects from a coach's perspective, when you are in the months of November and December and you're playing at games in the Midwest, if you can't run the ball, you're going to have a hard time winning because of the way the weather is in some respects. So I know that, the game's Saturdays in a dome stadium, and that, takes the weather element out of the equation. But the fact that Indiana ran for 355 yards on the day, that was a pretty impressive day. I think that was their sixth or seventh game of over 300 yards rushing, if I can remember correctly. Again, just a phenomenal feat for a team that you wouldn't have said that they were going to have, consecutive games of 300 yards rushing or more in that respects. And then you look at the defense, again, a tremendous game by those coaches, kids as well. They play hard. They're in position. They did let some things happen that I'm sure Bryant wasn't too happy with, especially when it came to getting pressure on Brown and having him dead rights for a sack, and they let him out of it multiple times. They held him to, under 90 yards rushing they won the money down. They did get the 2 takeaways. Other than the fact that they could not corral Brown on a few occasions, I did think they did tackle with authority, wrapped up, was in good position, and really negated yards after contact. They did not achieve 3 sacks, like I said, and then they did hold Purdue to less than 10 points on the day. So again, dominant performance by the Purdue defense. And then the special teams came in this game was, again, right here in the field position aspect of stuff. Indiana, I think they averaged on the night, starting from their own 34, and Purdue was their own 22. So almost a 15-yard differential. That's huge. They did not get the return game. They did have the field goals 100% as he kicked one of them, and they didn't get any game changers on the night in that respect, in that aspect of things. So, again, a very dominant aspect of things in that ball game, with Indiana having quite a bit of success with what they were trying to achieve in the game here. I'm going to try to pull up a couple clips here before we have to say goodnight for the night, and watch a couple of this one here. I wanted to show, this is what I meant by Fernando was just kind of he was just off here. Purdue looks like they're this is a 3rd and 10, and Purdue looked like they were off sides here, but they didn't throw the flag, and they kind of run a zone blitz type of coverage. And, he tries to throw this ball in the hole here, and I just don't think that's a great decision, because if he'd have waited a little bit, I think he's going to have Nowakowski right here in the middle of the field, and there's nobody back here. So I don't think Fernando was on his A game. I do think he was pressing a little bit. I'm sure their thought processes was, we got to get on top of these guys and not give them any hope, and for us to get to 12-0 and things like that. I think he just pressed himself a little bit and just didn't make great decisions all the time with the football. Here is another one where he makes a great back shoulder throw here on a route that, this is a route I can't remember who they stole it from, but it was on tape, and everybody's hit this route on them. Now they're in man. Most of the time they were in cover 3, but they block the tight end, keep him in, and they kind of see a kind of a wheel route there by Surratt. But this is great ball placement by Fernando, and it's great to see number 13 get up and get it like we were accustomed to see him here. He's been gone for 2 weeks. Here's a great run, Indiana running their inside zone concept out of a bunch set. Great job here by Cooper. Watch Cooper get this block here. He's going to come in, and he's going to block this guy, and it's going to help Keelan get the extra yardage here. Boom. And that's just a phenomenal effort by Omar. And, Black, I tell you, that dude, I love that kid. He runs hard. He is a man-child. And they let him finish it off here. Indiana did a great job. No penetration, kind of covered guys up, and got him into the end zone. So, the other thing is Drew Evans did dress in this game. He did not play. Hopefully he'll get back. We'll find out probably more here in the next day or two. Here's an RPO. This is a great decision by Fernando here, even though they kind of missed it here. But a great job there on that one, getting it in and out of his hands and getting the first down. I'm trying to get to this one. I thought he almost broke it. Roman almost broke this play here. Indiana runs basically 2 tight ends. They got stays at the top, and this was a way to balance the front and get the blocking that they needed. And that was a great play there to get the first down. I wanted to see, there's the one. This was Fernando on the design quarterback keep around the end here. They did a great job. It was a good job by Surratt at the top here, blocking that in. And Indiana, they walk in the end zone. We'll see it better here, I believe. Yep. You can see what Surratt does a good job of cracking here and just getting in the guy's way. And Fernando even faked out the cameraman. And this is the touchdown by Keelan where he makes the safety look bad. He had him dead to rights and does a great job moving. Good job of, Indiana covering up the front and, Black getting through there. It was a nice thing. Let's see here. Okay. This is the run. And Indiana just basically running a simple inside zone, nothing special here. Kind of tagging it with the RPO if they want it. And Becker does a great job here because he's got man on. He gets in position, and Hemby showed his speed there. Look at he outran those three guys, and I was glad to see the kid get that on Saturday because he had worked so hard at all year long, and he was so close. A couple defensive plays here. This is some of the things I was talking about that Indiana, they're just not going to be able to do against Justin Sane and Ohio State, and this is one of them. You can't let that guy outside of you like that. And, he scrambled, but here's the best thing about it. How about Farrell, man? This kid this year has been a ball hawk, getting the pick. I mean, Brown almost threw it just like he threw it right at him. I just didn't know what he was doing on that one. It's crazy. Here's the one where they had him dead to rights, and they missed him. And, Kamara, he can't come under here. He still has to play up to the level of the quarterback. And what I mean by that, even though he's going inside here, he really has to be working up here, even though he's thinking going here, because he's that last line of defense, and that's what happens. And next thing you know, he's pinned on the outside, and they make a big play on 3rd and 8 to get the drive going. And you can see their field position was huge. This is a great throw. I mean, Indiana's kind of rolling over the top at the top there and kind of playing a combination down here at the bottom. And this is just a great throw in between two defenders. So that one, you kind of tip your hat at them, and say, great catch, great throw, and line up, play the next down. But again, another chance to get off the field, you got to get off the field. See, this is Boykin. He's got to stay outside here. You can't dip underneath there. He's dead to rights right here. He's got to play over the top and let these guys funnel the inside and try to funnel him back, and they let him get to the perimeter, and it's a big play. So, these are some of the things that I'm sure are getting pointed out in the room with coach and the players and such. But Indiana does what Indiana does pretty good, is they bowed up down here and didn't let them breathe hardly, and forced them to kick a field goal. And that was about it for Purdue's ball movement all game against Indiana. And you can just see where they were fully dominant in there. And like I said, a couple things that they can work on. They're going to get pointed out, and why they'll say, like I said earlier, now we're getting in a point of the year. You're in the championship mindset now. The margin for error is razor thin. And simple things like being out of position when you should be outside of them can cost you big, because the team you're playing against has got people that can exploit you and make you look bad real quick. And that is the thing when, like, Indiana plays against Ohio State on Saturday. You got Tate, you got Smith, you got Sane, who's completing 80% of his passes. He's very accurate. He can move. He's mobile. They got a good offensive line. And then you flip it over to defense, and, it's like facing Indiana's defense because they're very tough to run it on. And so these are the things that Indiana is going to have to be playing at such a high level on Saturday versus the Bucks, and vice versa. It's just not Indiana. It goes against to Ohio State as well, because both teams have the talent to exploit whatever mistake you make and make you pay for it. And that's the thing that makes Indiana just as dangerous as a team as anybody in all this. Well, remember, Wednesday's signing day, so everything we'll have on thehoosier.com to have you up to date as it pertains to the signees, and when they'll have a presser that day to announce it. So you keep our eyes on thehoosier.com. On Thursday, we'll talk about the Buckeyes, look at them A to Z, and what Indiana has in front of them and what they're going to have to do to get themselves a Big Ten championship. But 12-0, best record in school history. They still got more to play, and that's the beauty of it. Even after this week, they still have more to play for, and Indiana can do everything and anything and potentially shock the nation with what they may end up being able to do Saturday against Ohio State. Right now, they're the dog at 5.5 points. We'll see how that line shuffles through the week, but be back here on Thursday. Stay tuned to Jim Coyle and the Indiana Sports Beat as we have some announcements coming ahead with what we will be doing as it pertains to Saturday, when you've got basketball and football playing on the same day down there in Indianapolis. There's a place that we may be to do some post-game or some pregame and post-game. Post-game for basketball, pregame for football. But stay tuned to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. Get over to the Hoosier.com. Annual subscription, 50% off, and get that before the holidays. And I will be back here Thursday night, 7:30. Come back and join us. Let's have a little fun, talk a little ball, and get ourselves ready for Indiana, Ohio State Big Ten Championship game Saturday evening down in Lucas Oil Stadium. Until Thursday, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Tailgate right here on thehoosier.com. We'll see you Thursday.